The newsletter. You may already be familiar with the term, and the probabilities of you having read at least one during your life are quite high. We can trace them back all the way to the 17th century, and this is something being used in modern society like crazy. But the question here is that, are they really that useful? Does consumer or people like you and me use them? Or there is one key strategy behind the minds of each one of the creators and people doing the newsletter? Whether creators doing newsletter have a meaning or we can extract any usefulness about them, it's time to sit down, discuss and explore this topic to understand what really we can extract about it. So as I said, sit back, fasten your seatbelts because we are about to start a zigzagging journey towards epiphany. Before we start, I want to remind to every one of you that you have available my website, a journey towards discovery, growth, self-improvement all together. The website is really simple and has one simple meaning, connecting between each other. All you will find in the website is just the slightly amount of information needed to get to know me a bit more, and you, especially you. It's all about connecting and starting a journey together that we can explore. So if you're interested on this idea or topic, I highly recommend every one of you checking the link down below. And now let's begin. As I mentioned to every one of you on previous episodes, today is not a research-based podcast. We have no evidence behind the topics that we will be covering today. It's just what I've been learning, seeing, and reading throughout years, and a bit of my opinion towards newsletter. This topic really intrigues me because when I was back in university, this was one of the first things they actually teach you to learn how to make a newsletter, the tools online. There are companies built purely and entirely for doing newsletter on a daily basis, and many people does that as of today. If you are actually thinking about your email, I guarantee you that most likely you have 50 of them, 15 of them for granted. And there are so many that we have actually started to not be able to distinguish the nature of an email or a newsletter, because everything has become kind of newsletter, daily impacts for consumers to remind whatever they want to do. And this has grown to an extent that the more and more newsletters are there, the more and more campaigns and emails do we receive, the noise getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So at one point I was sitting down with myself thinking, is there any point towards subscribing into a new newsletter? What are they doing new or different to me? And the first answer is like literally nothing. The whole concept of newsletter hasn't evolved. I cannot evolve much more than we know today. So to actually be able to see this, we need to, before anything, head back a few centuries back in time. We need to understand when this started, how it began, and a bit of the history, super summarized. I don't want to get into crazy details. So we actually see what current newsletter come from and why they do the things they do today. So I look on the internet for the first newsletter that could be traced back in history. And this one is called the English Mercury, okay? It was published on 1588 and it was printed, it was one of the first print editions when the printer was discovered and produced. And it was just a sheet, a single sheet of news. And as I have here, they provided updates on the things happening at the time. So it was kind of the first thing people could have a piece of written paper to know what was going on in their city. Before that, everything was due to the word-to-mouth effect. And people get to know things because each one was telling them what was going on. But it was the first time that you had something written down. It played a significant role because people could actually it was kind of the first news as we know in paper today. Now, over the following centuries, this concept kept evolving, okay? And the popularity came because you have a daily piece of paper. You could read anywhere at any time without having to pay attention to a person, to a event, or whatever. Now, printing press comes in 15th century. This actually makes it easier to produce this kind of newsletter. So you now have copies and copies and copies, and you can do mass producing. Who did it first? Who took advantage of this first? Politics. Sharing news and political information was one of the first uses that we have record of newsletter, because it was the easiest and fastest way to convince the highest amount of people to vote you during the elections. Okay, now we have some more centuries. 18th and 19th centuries, it's where business communication start taking in. Okay, organizations and companies saw this as an opportunity not only for politicians but for them to connect with the audience. This is one of the first time that outside politics, companies start paying attention and using them towards building their portfolio of customers and clients. Now, where this actually breaks up and changes its format is on the 20th century. Why? The internet. We have the massive breakout of the internet communications. And the first things that appeared on the internet were blogs. Blogs were literally the power that anyone has in their hands to write just like a news paper did, but from their houses, and everyone could read their blogs. This grew into the emails that we know as of today. What happened if you combine one with the other? That all of a sudden people realized they could do what 100 years ago people were already doing, but on the internet and on mass scale. And this is why things evolved the way we know today. Things has taken one more slightly shift in reality. Cost is practically zero. If you get anything well done, you may get customers that bring you that money back or that profit for your company business or whatever you're doing. And you can personalize them. You can be your own journalist from the comfort of your houses. Problems comes in when information and the use of the newsletter is so widely spread that you no longer are able to differentiate their utility anymore. I told you this story for one reason. When newsletters started, they were used so people could read things easily at any time without having to pay attention to a single person or event. Nowadays, you can do that through videos, through live chats, through newspaper online. So you kind of lost the essence that this was useful in the first place. So now people use them as a way of summary things, of connecting audience, of reminding, or even sending them offers, coupons, whatever. But that's the same thing you could be doing if you just search on the internet. And for some of you, you may argue that, well, it's easier because it's on your email inbox and you have nothing else there. The problem is for most of you, you have hundreds of unseen emails where it gets lost. Things get lost and you don't know if it was new or not. And the sense of urgency and the utility of it get lost quite easily. So what companies are doing is using them as a special discounts offer for people to follow. 15% discount. They introduce the discount effects inside newsletter. But once again, with the internet coming in, you can actually look for those coupons online without much issue. So what's the point of newsletter? Why do companies keep doing them if it's so oversaturated? Well, the reason why companies, individuals, or anyone trying to grow an online business does this kind of newsletter is because if you are not doing them, you are missing a slightly percentage of opportunity of growth. And let me explain you why. If we are all thinking that the market is saturated and we never grow or get into there, we already lost everything or slightly any opportunity we had. Even though it's super oversaturated, if you manage to catch a 1.0% of such a big market, it's more than if you didn't. So what companies and people do is, even if I manage to get 100 daily readers in my newsletter, that's better than zero. And when we are talking about low numbers in terms of people or readers, and the slightly variations in percentage, 1.1%, 1.2%, 0.2, whatever, it's such a big increase that for any starting company, this may be the difference between having profit or losses at the end of a month. So that's why everyone does them. This is the same reason why I make a weekly podcast on a super saturated market, because if over time I manage to get 10 daily listeners, I would be able to connect with them, grow, and actually understand more about this world that if I didn't. That's the simple answer. You need to do it because that's the only way, and that's the best way to get a 1.0%. Now we can actually get into more of the details of how should we approach it, how can we become different, and that that slightly differences that could launch your newsletter, your strategy, or whatever you want to do through this medium towards new levels. Okay, because we need to accept that the newsletter and will be mainly the primarily source of mass distribution, because it's cheap, because we all use them. You don't need to do anything new. You just click a button and it appears in your inbox. And what better way than this one to actually start or keep going or whatever. What I'm more concerned about is that we all seems lost on this medium of newsletter. If you haven't, but if you can, try going in LinkedIn. Okay, if you are on the working age, you will suddenly and fast enough realize how mostly every profile that is slightly big has a newsletter, and that it's constantly reminding you why his newsletter changed the world completely. And of course, this is marketing. We all need to do it. I myself do it. This is not being hypocrite. But when you try them, you realize how they're mainly empty. I have newsletter about business, sport, and games. None of them really bring me any benefits. I have one newsletter for my sport company, supplement company. I think I will tell you right now, from that one exactly, I have 547 different emails of their newsletter reminding me from offers, how to use their products, discount, I said it, all those things. I never use one of them ever. It's there because I just literally have a special folder to store them, and automatically they get sorted out there and I don't have to see them in my main inbox. But from others, from LinkedIn, I follow The Hustle, Hotspot, The Drum, many of them. I barely found any utility on them because those are the same news I could be reading, but even though they're super pretty, super well organized, super well written, and easy to access, I don't get a point. And that's my big issue with newsletter. Why? It's finding the balance. Like, maybe it's not for me, and I'm the one outside of the bubble. But there is no connection. They felt super cold. I don't feel like listening to them. I much rather open a YouTube video or a podcast that talks about news and hear them from there, and then maybe jump on the real news by myself. But besides that, it's like there are so many emails that maybe it's that there are so many emails that it seems everything is one step below on the important of the subject or the topic. Maybe they're super interesting news and I should read every one of them. But since I have so many of them, it's like I lost the interest. And I'm not saying I have so many of them because I follow all of the newsletter possible. It's even them. It's even one that daily newsletter. So how can we different? Well, there's one strategy or one case that caught me by surprise, and that was really interesting. There is this how do you call it? This influencer, a speaker, whatever you call it, content creator, digital content creator, who decided that despite having his newsletter, the way to actually get something more done was to grow a community or a close group through WhatsApp. WhatsApp communities, and I think he's one of the first innovators in this area. Starting a WhatsApp community, he saw the niche in opportunity and he connected them through their community, and that community allowed for the newsletter to grow. So it was kind of a two-way strategy where each one of those communities took advantage of the newsletter because they were in contact with the content creator by itself. The relation was much closer, so they feel aligned. And then one made the newsletter grow, and the newsletter keep coming back for these communities to actually show what's going on around and teach them and talk with them, whatever. This is interesting because I think the point that we try to achieve with a newsletter is that sense of community. It's that having people around you to talk, to share news, and to actually make them feel part of a group. Communities are super powerful. That's a topic that alone would take hours and hours of explanation and deeply understanding. But if we actually want to have something similar to a big community made by a newsletter, I think the goal or the strategy should not be build a newsletter that gets ourself a community. I think the smart idea would be to build a community, and through that community, actually kind of fed them with our newsletter that we create manually, whatever you want to do. And from there, you actually explore. Because if we go the other way around on a super saturated wall, I don't know, it's hard to balance. I don't know what should come first, the community, the newsletter, who should take the importance, if the community towards the newsletter or the newsletter towards the community. It's a topic to discover. I don't haven't figured out. I haven't figured out an answer yet to the topic, and that's why I'm making this reflection, this broad topic, so you and I together can discuss on the utility on newsletter. I think the habit, but I think the more and more time it comes with this world, they are starting to get blurred out, and that we lost the sense of identity that this medium had 300 years ago when they started. Finding that each challenge, I'm super interested to see what people do, because by no means this medium is gonna die. I think it's even I'm making this podcast and the medium is at its best in all the area of digital because of the easiness and the utility others find, especially LinkedIn. LinkedIn has boosted the rates of people coming into newsletter. But what do you think? This is my question. What do you think about newsletter? You come to this point. I would love to hear your thoughts about this medium. Is it really useful for people? Do you really actually use it on a daily basis? If you do, tell me why. And if you have a newsletter, explain to me what have you done, how did you do it, Why did you do it? So I can actually learn and get to know more about it. This is not about a theoretical class of what is a newsletter. This is more about the use of it and if it actually has a meaning towards any of us. But until then, I think we leave it here. I don't know how long it is. I'll take these last minutes to make a small comments that from now on, we'll see how it goes. I'll try to bring these topics of self-reflection, things I read, put in my ideas, put in my speech, and trying to do the thing I love most, which is talking. I'm taking this next month as a trial towards improving the speech, improving my voice, and getting or seeing if my goal or of using my voice to connect, to talk, and to get to know more people around the world actually get something. If it's one single person, I will be happy. But from the following months, I will try to explore this sense of I'm gonna talk, I'm gonna give my opinions. I would love to hear and have feedback. That's one of the things I would love most. But we'll see how it goes. It will only be me, my voice, and the power of connecting with you. Whether you have something to apport or not, I hope you can accompany me in this journey of exploring, of growing, of learning, which is all, which is what this is about. So I really hope we can come to a meeting point. I'll still really explore with shorts and new content. I try my best to keep getting better at speaking, at pronouncing things. I know my pronunciation is horrible, but I really want to give a try to English, to podcasting, or talking in general. And we'll see where we are in a few months, trying to explore these kind of topics. I think next one I'm making IKEA, the company, and we'll talk about it because I have some super interesting factors about it. So I really recommend you to pay attention and stay tuned for the next one. So short, easy, and sweet. Newsletter has really brought my attention. I hope it brought yours as well. And as I always say, I'll see you soon.